I always get to the office first. 7:14 a.m., same parking spot, same coffee from the machine in the second floor kitchen, same desk in the open plan floor that I've occupied for 3 years. Last Monday I arrived and the chair was warm. Not slightly warm. Warm the way a chair is warm when someone has been sitting in it for an hour. The building doors had been locked when I arrived. I had used my own keycard to enter, and whatever had been sitting at my desk knew I was coming. The office building opened officially at 8 a.m. Cleaning crew out at 6:30. Security round at 7, signed out by 7:05. Between 7:05 and 7:14, by every record that existed, the building was empty. I had worked there for 3 years and arrived before everyone else for most of them. Not ambition. More than the 40 minutes of silence before the floor filled up was the only part of the day that felt entirely mine. I made coffee, read emails without anyone asking me questions, sat at my desk and existed without performing existence for anyone else. My desk, middle of the open plan floor, no dividers, visible from every direction, personalized minimally. A small plant, a photograph, a pen I kept in the left drawer. That Monday in February, I came in, made my coffee, walked to my desk and sat down. The chair was warm. I stood up immediately. The sensation was specific enough that I looked around before I could stop myself. Empty floor. Every other chair pushed in. Every monitor dark. The overhead lights still clicking on in sections as I'd walked through. I sat back down slowly. The chair cooled within a few minutes. Heating system, I told myself. Desks near vents sometimes retained warmth. I was near a vent. It was February. I checked the vent. Opposite side of the room. I opened my laptop and started working and did not think about it again until Tuesday morning when I sat down and felt it again. Wednesday it was warm. Thursday it was warm. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't told anyone because I already knew what it meant and wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. By Thursday, I was arriving at 6:58. Not to investigate, to catch the heating explanation in action. Arrive before whatever residual warmth was responsible had time to dissipate. If it was the building, I'd feel it throughout the chair. If it was something else, I'd arrive before it happened. Thursday, 6:58. Chair cold. I sat down. Coffee. Laptop. Emails. At 7:11, I got up to refill my coffee. Back at 7:14. The chair was warm. 4 minutes. I had been gone 4 minutes. I stood behind it and looked at the floor. The carpet showed compression marks easily. My chair left a clear circular impression from daily use. The marks were undisturbed. Nothing had moved. Nothing had rolled out and back. I looked at my desk surface. The pen from my left drawer was on the desk, uncapped, positioned to the right of my keyboard, the way you leave a pen when you've been writing something and plan to come back to it. I picked it up and held it for longer than was rational. Then I recapped it, put it in the drawer, and went to IT. Access logs. No keycards used between 6:30 a.m. and my own entry. The floor had been empty. I walked back to my desk, sat down, looked at the pen in the drawer. Then I looked at the chair I was sitting in, and I thought about how many mornings I had arrived and sat down without checking whether it was already warm. How many mornings before Monday I simply hadn't noticed. The next morning I watched the chair when I came back from the coffee machine. The backrest was still moving, not dramatically. A slight forward swing, the kind of movement a chair makes when someone has just stood up from it, when the weight has just left. I stood in the doorway and watched it slow and stop. Whatever had been sitting there had left less than a second before I came back. It had known I was coming back, and it had timed it. I started documenting. Every evening before I left, photographed the desk. Pen in drawer. Chair pushed in at a specific angle measured against the desk edge. Notebook closed with a corner folded. Small forensic markers. Friday, pen on desk. Chair angled 2 degrees outward. Monday, notebook open to a page I hadn't used. Tuesday, the photograph of my sister moved 4 centimeters to the right. Each change minor enough to miss without documentation. With documentation, impossible to explain away. I showed the photographs to Don, 2 desks over, the kind of person who needed a rational explanation before he could function. Maybe cleaners, he said. Cleaning schedule. They finished at 6:30 and didn't touch desks. Maybe you're misremembering. Time-stamped photographs, consistent across 11 days. He was quiet. Anyone else experiencing it? I spent that afternoon asking casually. Nobody else, just mine. That evening before I left, I placed a single strand of my own hair across the closed laptop lid, taped at each end with 2 small pieces of clear tape. Next morning, both pieces of tape intact. The hair was gone. Not moved, not displaced. Gone. I stood at my desk at 7:14 a.m. and understood that whatever was sitting here while I was away wasn't careless. It wasn't leaving traces by accident. It was leaving exactly the traces it chose to leave. No more, no less. I requested the CCTV footage. Formal request. Facilities. Deliberately vague reason. A personal item possibly missing from my desk. It took 4 days. I watched it with headphones in, starting at 6:30 a.m. on the first Monday. 6:30. Cleaning crew leaving. 2 people. Cart. Door closes. 6:58. Me entering. Continuous timestamp. No cuts. Camera covering the full floor entrance and partial open plan view. Between 6:30 and 6:58, nobody entered. 4 viewings. Certain. Then I switched to the floor level camera, wider angle. My desk visible. 6:30. Cleaners leave. Floor empty. 6:31 through 6:57. Empty. 6:58. Me entering. But at 6:44, my chair moved. Not dramatically, a slight forward rotation, 5 degrees. The kind of movement if someone rested a hand on the back while passing, except nothing was passing. Empty floor. No person, no shadow, no motion anywhere else in the frame. Just the chair rotating slowly in an empty room. Then the motion sensor above my desk clicked on. I paused the footage and sat with that frame for a long time. The motion sensor covered a 2-meter radius. It triggered on body heat, movement, presence. There was nothing in the frame, and the sensor had triggered, which meant whatever was there wasn't showing up on camera, but it was generating enough presence to be felt by the room. I showed the footage to Price, the building security guard. He watched it twice. Careful man. Processed before speaking. Equipment fault, he said. Chairs roll on their own, HVAC vibrations. The motion sensor, I said. He watched that part again. Sensitive sensors, dust, air currents. I asked him to check whether the sensor had triggered on any other desk in those 18 minutes. He pulled up the log. My desk's sensor triggered at 6:44. Every other sensor on the floor? Nothing between 6:30 and 6:58. He didn't have an answer for that. He said he'd look into it. He was genuinely unsettled. The specific discomfort of someone whose rational framework has produced an impossible result and won't tell them what to replace it with. I went back to my desk. The pen was on the surface. I had put it in the drawer when I arrived. Watched myself do it. Gone directly to security without stopping. I picked up the pen. On the notepad beside my keyboard, a small pad I kept for quick reminders. A single line. Handwriting I didn't recognize. 6 words. I read them. Then I read them again. You should stop arriving so early. I stood completely still in a filling office floor and held that sentence in my head. Not a prank. The floor had been empty. The footage confirmed it. Not a colleague. Nobody had been near my desk. 6 words from something that had been sitting in my chair before I arrived, telling me to stop coming. I photographed the note and put it in my jacket pocket. Stood still for 30 seconds in the middle of an open-plan office filling with colleagues and decided not to tell anyone. I ran the conversation in my head a dozen times. Every version ended the same way. Either I sounded unstable or I sounded like I was manufacturing a harassment claim without a specific person to name. 6 words. Unknown handwriting. No evidence of who. I moved through the day on split attention, half working, half watching the floor for anyone who behaved differently. Any knowing look, any sign of someone waiting to see my reaction. Nothing. At 4 p.m., I went to the bathroom on the floor below. I had started avoiding the one near my desk, and came back to find my notebook open. I hadn't touched it since morning. It was open to a page from 3 weeks earlier. Meeting notes. In the margin, same handwriting. "I've been here longer than you." I closed the notebook, put it in my bag, told my manager I had a migraine and left an hour early. In the elevator, I noticed my hands were shaking slightly. Not fear, exactly. The specific feeling of being observed by something that wants you to know it's observing you. Something that leaves notes, not because it has to, because it wants to see what you'll do next. I came in at 6:15 the next morning. The logic? Whatever was using my desk arrived between 6:30 and 7:14. If I arrived at 6:15, I would either catch it arriving or find the desk already occupied. Building in night mode. Emergency lighting only. Main lights clicking on in sections as I moved through. My desk, empty. Chair, cold. Everything as I'd left it. I sat down and waited. 6:30, nothing. 6:44, I watched the chair, watched the motion sensor. Nothing. 6:58, nothing. By 7:30, I was starting to feel like an idiot. Then my phone buzzed. Price. Additional footage. Stairwell camera on my level. He wanted me to come down. Security office. Paused frame on his monitor. Stairwell camera. Door to my floor. Timestamp 6:43. The door was opening. Not fully, maybe 30 centimeters. And in that gap, visible for exactly 2 frames before the door swung back, a hand reaching through, then gone. Price cross-referenced the keycard log. No card had been used. The stairwell door required a keycard to enter from outside. From the floor side, it opened freely. Someone had already been inside. They hadn't entered. They had reached out, and then gone back in. The building did a full sweep. Security, facilities, 2 police officers. Every floor, every room, every storage space, server closet, bathroom. Systematic, thorough, nothing. No signs of habitation, no forced entry, no personal items, food, bedding. The kind of search thorough enough to be reassuring and useless enough to be maddening. Former employee with a copied keycard, the police said. The facilities manager changed every access code in the building by end of day. I watched them do it. I went home feeling something close to relief. Next morning, 7:14. Normal coffee. My desk. I sat down. The chair was warm. Pen out of the drawer, and on the notepad, the codes won't help. I stood in the empty floor at 7:14 and let myself understand something I had been avoiding. This was not a person with a grudge and a copied keycard. This had been at this desk before I arrived, before the company moved in, before the building was converted from whatever it was before. It was not inconvenienced by locks. I moved desks that day, different floor, far corner, back to the wall, full view of the room. The new chair was cold the first morning, cold the second, cold the third through 6th. On the 7th morning, I sat down at 7:14 and felt it. Warm. Not as warm as the first desk, not yet. That afternoon, I walked past the old floor on my way to a meeting. Position 14C was empty. The desk reassigned, but not yet filled. The chair had been rolled to the side wall when I left. It was back at the desk, pushed in, exactly positioned, the way I used to leave it every evening. Nobody else was on that floor. I walked over slowly and pressed my hand flat onto the seat. Warm. It had gone back to check. I requested my personnel file 6 weeks later. Routine. Updating documentation. Needed my original start date. HR sent it as a PDF. I found what I needed and was closing it when I noticed the employment history section. Legacy system. Each desk had a reference number. My original desk, position 14C. I scrolled through the occupant history for 14C. 7 names over 11 years. The 5th had an end date the same month as their start date. 1 month. Gone. I searched the name internally. Nothing. Asked a colleague who had been there longer. She remembered him vaguely. Quiet. Left abruptly. He came in very early, she said. Before anyone. He said the mornings were the only time the desk felt like his. I kept my voice even. What happened to him? She thought about it. Some kind of episode. Started saying someone was using his things, his desk. She paused. He seemed genuinely frightened. Did he ever figure out who? No. She looked at her screen. He stopped coming in early eventually. I think that made it worse somehow. Like, once he stopped, it had more time. I thanked her and went back to my corner desk. 7:14 the next morning. Chair warm, pen on the surface. No note. Not yet. I still work there. Leaving felt like the wrong response, like confirming something, like the position would simply wait for whoever came next, the way it waited for me, the way it waited for the man who lasted 1 month on 14C before whatever happened to him happened. I arrive at 7:14, not earlier, not later. I keep the pen in the drawer and photograph it before I leave each evening. Most mornings, it's still there. Once a week, it isn't. Once a week, pen on the surface, uncapped, right of the keyboard. Sometimes a note, sometimes not. When there is a note, I photograph it, close the notebook, put it in the drawer, and don't read it again. I made that decision after the 8th note. It said something I'm not going to repeat here. Price retired 6 months ago. The new security team is younger and less interested in anomalies. They replaced my chair in an office refresh. Ergonomic, better lumbar support. I thought it might change something. First morning with the new chair. 7:14. I sat down. Warm. I've stopped thinking it's about the furniture. It's not the chair. It's not the desk. It's the position. The specific coordinates of that space in that building. Whatever was there before the building was there, before the street, before anything we put on top of it. It was sitting in that spot before we arrived. It hasn't stopped just because we built around it. If you have a spot you think of as yours, a desk, a seat, a corner you always return to, I want you to think about something tonight. Tomorrow morning when you sit down, check whether the chair is already warm.